Hello and welcome back to another episode for Project Seed Money. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited to be joined today with Anna Leitensdorfer. We are going to be talking about illustration, and we are going to be talking about all things animation and fun to get our authors and get our audience inspired to do some more creative things. Thank you so much for being here, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get started. Let's party, y'all.
Yes. So, what got you started in illustration?
So I graduated from college with a degree in animation, and I struggled to find a job in that industry at the time. There was a lot of close downs. Like there was a few studios that closed down. It was very hard to find a job, so a lot of competition. So I decided to kind of segue and change things up a little bit. So one of my family connections, she works as an editor. And she was like, you know what? You can probably do some art side for books. And I was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. Loved books growing up. Ate up so many. I had like five on my desk in fifth grade, to the point where my teacher was concerned about me because she's like, how do you read all of those? And I was like, just like books. So it's like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to that like that childish nostalgia again. I'm gonna go back, and try to figure out, why I love stories so much. So I kind of leaned into all my experience with learning how to do animation in college. I was like, oh my gosh, I know concept art. I know how to, design characters. And then I was like, a lot of this, I feel like authors could benefit from that kind of outside perspective. So that's why I was like, so I do a bunch of different illustrations for authors now. So like fantasy maps. If you want to see your world visual, you want to make sure that your characters are getting from point A to point B in a realistic, because that's what I'm thinking. Like I need to know how long it's going to take them to get there. So I love making maps. They're like one of my favorite things to do. And then I also love doing character art. So a lot of authors will get character art done to showcase their characters in a visual format. Because let's face it, if I see pretty art when I'm scrolling, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna find out where it came from. So I'm gonna want to know who are these characters, and if they came from a book and I like what I see, I'm gonna read the blurb, and hopefully I get hooked. And then I also love doing illustrating scenes too. So I love taking a scene from a book and being like, okay, how can I make this visually impactful? The author's already done it with the words. I want to do it in some sort of painting format so you can really kind of get a different way of seeing that scene. Like I'm very visual, so I like seeing all that fun stuff. So
Absolutely, me too. One of my favorite things in a fantasy book is when you open it up and you see the map and you're just like, oh, we're going places. And I've even recently read a romance series, a contemporary romance series where each of the books had a map in the beginning of the book. And it was like the town and the different placements of like, it was a family run town. So it was like all the different buildings and things. So even in contemporary romance, there is places for having a map for those characters. So I think that's incredible. What does the onboarding process look like with you? Like, what should these authors be preparing themselves for?
so did we want to talk about like one project specifically or just in
Yeah,
general?
let's stick with the maps because I think we're kind of talking about that already. I know you do offer lots of different things, and at the end, maybe we can give a list of the things that you can do. But for now, let's stick with the map analogy.
Okay. So as far as the maps go, it really depends, like what style you're looking for. I'm a little influenced by J.R.R. Tolkien. I love the way he did the maps of Middle Earth. To me, that's fantasy right there. Immediately, yes. So I do draw a lot of inspiration from that. And so when authors come to me, it's because they like that style. That's what they're going for. So I basically talk to them about, tell me a bit more about your world. Is there dragons? Just general questions like, do you want any illustrated icons? Because I do have add-ons. So some authors, most of the time, majority of the authors I've worked with for their fantasy maps, they have chosen all of the add-ons. So generally, what I mean by that is you have just the standard outline of the map, no borders, no icons, no color, none of that. And that's just like the base one. But a lot of them, like I said, want to do the add-ons. So the add-ons are like an illustrated border, illustrated icons, and an accent color or a textured background. So we hammer out all those details, like what do we want, yada, yada, yada. And if they choose any of those add-ons, they'll be like, hey, I want a, dragon, for example, in this part of the map. I was like, okay, cool, write that down. And so once we hammer out all those details, I put a contract together and I put in all that information in the project scope and I will send it to the author. I'm always like, please read carefully because if there is something not on here that we discussed, I want to make sure that we're both on the same page because I don't want any misunderstandings to happen. I want this to be as seamless as possible. So I always recommend read carefully. I also have a separate licensing agreement that is separate from the contract. It deals with what you can and can't do with the artwork. For the most part, the maps are commercial use, so you can put them in your book. You can reprint them as much as you like in your book. And so after that, once everything is signed, all thing is good. We've already discussed payment as per the contract. We come to agreement on how payment is made. And for the maps, I require payment in full upon completion. That's one of the first things I say, just letting you know. So again, everybody's on the same page. And once that is done, I get started on map silhouettes. So if they give me a, if they, I get all kinds of sketches. Like I know a lot of authors, artists, they get like Microsoft Paint and they do like, I've worked with all kinds of different references that authors give me. And I was like, you know what? I love interpreting it. Yeah, that reminds me. So authors, they'll either give me sometimes I get all kinds of different things because a lot of them have a general idea of like kind of the shape of what they want their world to look like. And like if there's any territories, I've been given an outline sketch and some of the I can't read some of the stuff they write down. So, but thankfully some of them will send me a Word document describing all these territories and other areas. So I basically take those two and I cross-reference them and then add them to the map. So I do 3 silhouettes. So I do a, what do you call it? This is kind of more my process than onboarding, if that's okay.
That's
And then,
perfect. Yes, yes, please keep
so
going.
I take all of the information the author sends me in regards to the world and I make silhouettes. So I make about 3 of them. If they're like, oh, I don't have a shape in mind, or they're like, here's like the general shape. So I kind of just play with it. I'll add islands here and there, or if they're like, there's no islands. So if they don't say anything explicitly, I just kind of roll with it. So I've had some authors I add islands and they're like, I didn't think of that. Like, that's a good idea. So I'm just like, oh, that feels good. I'm going to put that there. So I just add silhouettes. It's all rough sketches. And usually I'll start blocking in not necessarily city names, but placement if they don't have any cities specifically. They're like, I don't have any city names yet, but I want to see where you would put them as a map maker on the city. So like generally speaking, you'll find them more by like water, like bodies of water, because trade, escape routes, natural barriers, that sort of thing. So just stuff like that. And then like if they're in the mountains or what have you. So kind of like, they kind of like, hey, have fun, like place them wherever you want. Others will be like, hey, they just need to be in these specific areas, but they can be anywhere as long as it's within that territory. And I'm like, cool. So I make 3 silhouettes. I put it in a flat book, package it up nicely, and I will send it to the author. And I was like, please let me know if there are any changes you would like to make, or if you like one that immediately you're like, that's the one, go ahead, go for it. Now, if there are any changes that need to be made as far as like shape wise or what have you, or if they want to add some islands from number 3 and put it on number 2, that is a revision 1. I usually build 3 revisions into my map making process that is included with the overall price. So usually I kind of have those revisions built in after every stage. So once silhouettes are approved, I move on to line art. And that's, I guess, the most tedious process. There's a lot of fine details I have to deal with. So here I will add the borders, the outlines, and the city names by this time. So if the author doesn't have any city names by the time I put in the silhouettes, by this time I'm like, hey, I'm gonna need those. So anyway, so I put those in and all usually handwritten. I mean, I can do fonts, but a lot of them opt for handwriting all of the names. So I put in the names of the cities, territories, oceans, all that other fun stuff. And I will then save it. I will save it. Usually it's between 1 or 2 different ones. It depends on like if I do like 2 different tree styles, it's like, okay, I kind of like both of these trees, but author has the final say. So I sometimes will do like two different iterations of the line art to see if they have a specific preference. Once I'm done with the line art, I send to the author. And again, they can either do a revision so they can change something, or if they're like, looks good to me, let's continue. So if no revision, so that would be revision two if they chose to change anything. So after that, I move on to the final stage, which if the author choose any color or like any accent colors. So a lot of times they'll use that for the names of all of their cities. So like red or purple or blue, I've done all of those. They'll have the cities a different color, or if they want like the icons to be a different color, that's what I mean by accent color. It's an accent. It's not meant to fight with everything. It's meant to accent it, make it pop a little bit. And then there's also the textured background if they choose to do that as well. Then I make some different paper texture backgrounds, and then I will either color correct them or kind of add a little depth and shading depending on what parts of the map require it to kind of give it that final like pizzazz, if you will. Usually I do about 3 different textures and plus like whatever color or different color corrections I do to each texture. So I'll send out 3 in a flat book and I'll send it to the author. And I was like, here are 3 different ones that I've done that I thought worked best for your map. Please let me know what you think. If you would like to change anything or try some new colors, that will count as your revision 3. So then they can either, pick one, or they're like, hey, I like this one, but I want it darkened a little bit. It's like, okay, say less, totally do that. So once they do that, they pick it, they're good to go. It's like, okay, I will package everything up for you, which I will put together a final package. So it includes a folder for RGB, which is for your web. The map will be in that color profile specifically for if you want to post it on your social media or put it in a PDF, that's what it's made for. There will also be a CMYK folder. That will be for print. The color profile will be different because it is for printing in your book if it's in color. I also add a grayscale in there as a backup because everybody needs a grayscale. And then I also include a Word document in that package which has specs, the dimensions of your book, unless otherwise specified. I always do a general 6x9 full page spread, unless the author says otherwise. So again, that's part of the project scope that's in the contract. So, but generally it's always that. I also include a example final with my template for that full page spread. So it'll have blue and red lines. The blue lines on the edges are for bleed. So it just shows anything over those blue lines will probably be cut off, just showing you an example. So when you put it in your book, you know what you have to work with. And then the red lines are generally where the gutter is, the center of the book. So that's why I know when I'm putting together the line art and the names, I don't put anything close or across that because nobody's going to be able to read that. So I like including that example because I'm very visual. So that way I can see, okay, this is kind of where we have things, placed. And then I will also include the Photoshop file that I work in. Generally, that is for if you have a book designer, for example, and they're trying to format it in your book and whatnot. If they need to move something small, they can totally just pop into that file, tweak it, and then resave it and yada yada. So it's just kind of make things easier for the book designer. I just ask that you don't use it for anything other than that. But that's what it's for, is in the event you have to change something small.
That's so generous of you. It feels like you give them so much. And I think honestly, later on in the interview, we're going to talk about red flags, but honestly, if it isn't that, like if it isn't that level of communication and it isn't that level of revisions and it isn't that level of contract and here's what the deliverables are, then I would just say red flag because there are the right people out there who are doing it right. But along the lines of that, it does seem like a process that's going to take some time. And it is a process that it sounds like they'll need to get a hold of you and get started working with you with still a considerable amount more time before the book is needing to be published. So can you give me some guidelines on what the timeline should look like? When should they reach out to you? And, maybe when is like kind of too late?
I've had some people reach out like while they were writing the book. They're like, I need a visual of my map. Like, I need this thing cranked out because I'm having a hard time visualizing where my characters are. And I'm like, by all means, they're like, I want to put it in my book too. So it's going to serve like two purposes. So I've had it as early as they've gotten like 3 chapters in. They're like, I need a map. And I'm like, okay, queen, I got you. Other times, some of them get it done, I think, after the first draft is written and they're in editing, because I always say get it done as early as you can, as long as you have really your world like fleshed out for the most part, where you want everything to be, because you're going to need it when you format your book. So you're going to want it ideally done before, like a month before, when you have to start putting that book together to publish, to format it and whatnot. Like if you're working with a book designer, they're going to want that stuff early ASAP, because they're going to know what they're working with. And in case they need to make any edits or any tweaks to it, in case it's like off by 0.01 centimeters or what have you. Because like I said, I work with the 6x9 template for the most part, unless otherwise specified. So, because some authors, they don't know what their trim size of their book is by that point. And it's like, well, I'm just letting you know, this is the standard for this type of book. But if you end up going with a different trim size, the whole thing might need to be redone. So just word of warning, know what your trim size is. Know what your trim size is. So, but yeah, trim size is just the size of your book in general. Like how big is a full page spread? How, like, is it a 6x9? Is it, what's another weird one? 5x9? I don't know. I can't do math right now. But yeah, so I mean, I'm always for as early as possible, because then you have something you can tease your readers with. When you're like, hey, I'm in the final stages of editing. If you want, a pretty map or pretty, color map or whatever, it's going to be in this book. So I'm always for teasing the readers, because everybody likes to show a little leg.
When these people come to you, what types of questions should they be prepared to ask you? And maybe not even just you, but as an illustrator in general, when they're researching and they're interviewing for illustrators, what types of questions should they be asking?
I think not, I wouldn't say necessarily questions, but generally know what style you want. That goes for anything, not just maps. Know what you're looking for. Do you want something more realistic? Do you want something more cartoonish? Do you want something in the middle? Do you want something with bold colors, muted colors? Because, like, say for example, if somebody came to me and I draw, like, say for example, I am like the best at dragons. I'm not. I love drawing them, but you wouldn't have me draw something that I'm not good at. For example, like you wouldn't have me draw, let's see, what's something I'm absolutely terrible at drawing? A cricket. If you want a whole bunch of crickets, I'd be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to be the right fit, because my specialty is not insects, for example. So just know what, no, my biggest thing is know the style you want, because I don't draw super realistically. It's very stylized, because it's stylized and cartoonized, because again, animation background here, that's kind of what was, ingrained into our brain, is very expressive, very cinematic, very painterly, that sort of thing. And so, like, if somebody's like, hey, I need a super realistic drawing of my character, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be a very good fit for you, because sorry, there's like a bug here. Speaking of bugs, it heard me talking about it. But yeah, I always tell them, I was like, know what style you have. As much as I would love to, realism is just not my style. And, I did have somebody one time, she asked me to help her redo a book cover, and she wanted it realistic. And I'm like, I understand that. That's a good vision, but I'm going to let you know, I am not a realism artist. That is not my style. And she's like, oh, I think you can do it. And I was like, I don't think will be a good fit for a project. I want you to get the best result possible. And I don't think that is me, because I know what my capabilities are. So did that answer your question? Like, just kind of know
Yeah, it definitely
what you
does.
want.
No, that definitely answers the question. I think that just to kind of summarize, in order to get your maps and your graphics in your book, absolutely 100% they have to be done before you start formatting. The sooner
Mhm.
you can do that, the better, but you're not going to want to do that after the fact. So maybe first draft, that's the time to start reaching out. And then what is like a timeline with working with you? If it was maybe a map with all of the add-ons, how long are they looking at this creative process?
So for a map with all of the fun stuff, we'd probably be looking at anywhere from 3 weeks to a month to complete because I do have a job, like another job aside from this. And it just takes like a lot of fine details. So, and also depends, other projects that I have going on. So it usually takes about 3 weeks to a month to do a map from start to finish. And that's if the author is like messaging me back like the next day with, with revisions or like, yeah, I've approved this. So sometimes it might take longer because the author may be busy and it's like, okay, I can't really, I want to move forward, but I have to wait for their approval first. So, but yeah, I can get it usually on average, it's about 3 weeks to a month to
Okay,
do
that's
to do
amazing. That's incredible. That's really awesome. So what are some of the, I feel like you've kind of touched on this, but what are some of the red flags in your industry?
So red flags are the first one I'm going to say is direct DMs. DMs that just unsolicited DMs are like people like artists saying like some are scams, some are artists, but if they're saying, "Hey, I can do your art for you, like commission me." And it's like, "No, absolutely not." You block and you run away. Do not give them the time of day. You should be the one reaching out to an artist if you are interested in their style. So don't take any direct messages from an artist saying they can do your project for you. You should be the one perusing portfolios. That comes to my next point is if they don't have much of a portfolio or social media presence. So I know with social media, a lot of people don't have websites anymore, but ideally you want to find someone who has a website. And if they do, have they done any prior projects? Like, for example, on my website, any projects I have done for authors with their permission, I have their project listed and the name of the project and their name as an author. So then anybody looking at it can then look up like those are real people, like they exist and yada yada yada. I'm not making this stuff up, I promise, even though I love fantasy. So that's another good one is making sure they have a website portfolio. And then making sure that their prices are listed somewhere. Some of them do it on their social media. I prefer to do it on my website. I find it more professional that way. I have a little PDF, a little button that opens up a PDF that lists all the prices for everything X, Y, and Z. So you're going to want to see prices. Some authors will say, "Hey, I have a budget for this project," or what have you. But I mean, it's great, by all means, have a budget, but also look at, what the prices for that artist is if you like, their portfolio. So going back to the social media thing is a red flag is if they don't have much of a presence or you can't look them up. Like if they tell you, "Oh, my name is so and so," and you go to look it up or their social media tag and it just doesn't really exist, like there's really nothing there, probably a scammer. We run away from those, or we troll them like I do because it's fun and it gets them in trouble. So, but yeah, you run away from somebody who doesn't have much of a social media presence. Majority of real artists will have their work on their social media, either cross posting on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, website, what have you. It shows that they exist, that they've done stuff. Another big green flag, I know we're kind of talking more about red flags, but it's kind of weird to say it as a red flag. The green flag is if they have process videos on different aspects of their website. You're going to want to see those so that way you're avoiding AI. That's a red flag if they have AI. If you
Yes.
yes, so if you suspect that their work is AI, I personally would not mind if somebody reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, I saw this project. You don't have a process video for it. Is it AI? Or I think this is AI." And I was like, "I'm glad that you're doing your research. Here is my work in progress pictures to prove to you that I do not use AI for this specific project because I record myself all the time. I have a screen recording on my computer. I use that while I work on commission work. So that way, if the author thinks I've done AI on any of their projects, I have proof." And then on top of that, I also take work in progress pictures. So usually throughout the different stages, I will just save a JPEG there, save a JPEG there, save a JPEG there. So then you can post it on Instagram and swipe and be like, "Hey, I do it all by hand." Like you can't really do progress pictures or progress videos with AI. And it's also just kind of like, establishing the relationship with the artist. If all they're concerned about is getting your money and not worry and not trying to figure out who you are as an author and learning about your story and making sure your characters are captured the way you want, I'd kind of steer clear from that as well. I'd rather have somebody who's just excited about my characters as me, you know? So I could have sworn there was another red flag. I'm trying to remember what it was though. Hmm. I think that covered all of them. I think the AI was one of the big ones. It's just basically just doing your prior research before reaching out to that artist. It's just making sure that they check all of your boxes.
Yes. One thing you had mentioned to me before this conversation was that you could recognize on social media if someone was utilizing AI by them not having a consistency in
Yes.
their style.
Mhm.
So, do you want to speak to that just a little?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a difference between not having consistency and experimenting with styles. I experiment with styles because I want to try something new. But a big thing in AI is if like you see somebody's Instagram, for example, and they do all cartoony stuff that isn't super proportionate, like you can tell they're learning, but it's not there yet. And then like suddenly they're doing these fully rendered pieces that are completely different. And because you can tell AI, hey, I want this drawn in the style of this person, but you could have 50 different 50 different renditions of the same thing in that person's style, for example. So it just there's just something off. It's kind of like a gut feeling, if you will, because again, if you go from disproportionate people that you're still working on to suddenly fully rendered stuff and it's like okay, but how did you develop to get there? How did you practice to get there? Another clue is if they don't do any process videos. So like if they've got a character who's got black hair, like it's a woman, she's got black hair, blue eyes, and she wears a blue dress or whatever, and you're trying to do a bunch of different pictures of her for art, and suddenly she's got different facial proportions or her eyes are purple instead of blue, like weird tells like that. If you're Because consistency is also knowing the characters you're drawing, like making sure, like one of my favorite characters for my fantasy romance book is a dragon. He's a black dragon with red eyes and very distinct horns. Those horns, eyes, and color are all consistent throughout all the years that I've drawn him. Now, he may look a little different, but that's because, again, I've evolved as an artist. I've learned proportions better. I've learned angles better, all that other stuff. But those three main things pretty much stay the same because I've learned. So it's kind of hard to describe. Like as an artist, I can just immediately like, yep, nope, that's AI, bad, bad, bad. But just kind of look like it's also kind of seeing like, did the artist learn from any mistakes? Did they improve? Are they kind of doing the same thing? So I mean, whenever in doubt, always message the person and ask them like, hey, I love this art piece. Would you mind sharing with me your process video? And if they can't produce it or they're super cagey about it, probably a red flag because they
That is
should be pretty open about being like, yeah, no problem.
That
So
is so helpful because when you are picking out someone to do artwork or illustrations for your book, whether that be the cover or the inside, it is so important to make sure that those people are not using AI. It changes every bit about the process of your publication if you are using AI for your illustrations. So really, truly like look into that if that's something that you're doing. And if you want these things like a map or these little content, like these little chapter things, make sure you're reaching out to somebody who is real and who does it and who can really answer your questions because it's going to save you a lot of heartache down the road. I promise.
yes.
Our audience is women who are on the fence and they're really trying to get that story from their mind out onto paper, and they're facing challenges and they're facing vulnerability and they're facing fears. Is there anything that you can say to my audience to just help encourage them to kind of keep going on their journey?
Let's just say authors are the reason why I illustrate for books now. If it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't have 5 books sitting on my desk in 5th grade and my teacher wondering if I was okay in the head. Okay. So, because of y'all, it gave me the desire to do story. I love like reading stories, and it's part of the reason why I went for an animation degree because I wanted to tell story. Doesn't matter what media at this point. It could be writing, it could be film, it could be so much as you acting out a scene with your dog, like partying or what have you. It's just like, you shouldn't be afraid to. Like, I was terrified going freelance doing illustration for authors. I was terrified because it's like, what if nobody likes my stuff? And then I remember the people I did artwork for last year and the year before and how much they loved it. And I was like, you know what? If 5 people liked my work, that's all I need to hear to keep me to have help me keep going. So like trust me, there will be cheerleaders. They're there. They will find you. Trust me. The
That's
internet is a wild place. They will find you.
Oh, that's so encouraging. I so appreciate it. And then do you mind just telling my audience where they can find you and how they can start these conversations with you?
Of course. So I have a TikTok and a Instagram all under the tag at Valkyrie_hero. That's like my social media name because my first and last name are kind of weird to see on social media. Nobody knows how to spell it. So I was like, we're just going to keep it simple. So those are my social media tags for any and all social media. And then you can also find me on my website, which there is a contact form if you would like to fill out and kind of inquire, like, hey, I've got questions or whatever. That is www.annaleitensdorfer.com. So my full name, I've got a bunch of different tabs for like maps, character art, all that other fun stuff. So you can see examples of past projects or personal projects and stuff like that. So you can either reach out via DM on Instagram. I've had many inquiries that way, and then also through my website.
Thank you so much. And I will make sure to have all of those links so that our listeners can find that really easily. I just really appreciate your time and your expertise. And thank you for sharing so much about the process with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode for Project Seed Money. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I will see you with another interview next week. Bye.